it's just been a great team effort. So we're pretty lucky to have the team we get to work with. And then the last thing I have is the action item that we have later on is seclusion and restraint. And it's interesting because in the report, we're supposed to talk about how many students were involved in incidences, how many students with disability for both seclusion and restraint. And the awesome thing is that the number in every single one of those 6 categories is the same, it's 0. So just really excited that we were able to take advantage. We had like a timeout room this year that was added, and kids could take a break, volunteer break, and it just led to kids knowing and learning how to self-regulate a lot better. So excited to report that that number is 0. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Any questions? Hearing none. Deb, would you report on special ed?
Special ed support staff, special ed staff have been working on the referrals that I talked about the last couple of board meetings. And they've gotten their assessments done. We're scheduling those IEP meetings so that these students will be ready to roll on the 1st of September. A lot of them are early childhood students or speech students who've never had any services before. So we didn't want to put that off and start those referrals in the fall and lose more weeks with them. So those are scheduled and ready to go. Today and yesterday, I worked with the support staff. We reviewed the building handbooks, the guidelines, the new COVID reopening guideline and the appendix updates. We did some trainings. We worked on scheduling and assignments, which is always very interesting. It's like playing dominoes. And then Monday, we have 2 students who are like a 5th year student who have special ed needs, and they're going to attend Project Search, which is a transition from school to work type of a program where they go to UW-Platteville. They're going to start next week because the students, the university students aren't in session yet, and they need a room that's big enough for all 9 of them. So they're going to do their instruction this coming week, and then they'll be out working in their job placements. It could be doing like office work or cafeteria work or something out in the community to just build job skills. They have a rotation. They go through different job trainings, and oftentimes kids end up with a job when they leave the program. So it's very successful. We're lucky to have it. And I too would like to thank all of the administration and office staff and everybody who's been here. There were some tough things we had to do this summer, and driving home, I always felt supported, and I always felt like we were hearing each other and working together. It was a tough job, and I would not have wanted to do it with anybody else. So thanks to everybody.
Thank you, Deb. Any questions? Alrighty, Aaron, superintendent.
Yes, Tina just let me know that we are back on with YouTube. So for those of you watching at home, sorry for the inconvenience. We're back online and going. So we're just finishing up administrative reports. We have not begun any discussion or any action items. So superintendent report, just wanted to report that between yesterday and today, we received over 30 different guiding documents from DPI, from the Department of Health Services, and Graham County with suggestions on reopening. So we're going through those. Some of them are really helpful, like here's a form that you can use to do this part, which will be helpful. A lot of them that we've read through really kind of reinforce what's already in our reopening plan. There have not been a lot of things that made us make big shifts, but we have not read through all those 30 documents as they were really, many of them were released at 2 o'clock today. So if there are any big changes that would be needed, at that point, we would have a special board meeting probably next Wednesday, just in case that there's something big. So that's it. Everything else we're going to have in discussion or action today.
Okay. Any questions of Aaron? Alrighty, moving on to discussion items. The first one is discussion on face-to-face, hybrid, and full virtual educational environments. Aaron, take it away.
Okay. Last, I believe it was May or June, when we discussed this, we did talk about the options that DPI had suggested, looking at how we're going to provide the full face-to-face 5 days a week, Or do you want some type of blended or hybrid, which means some days they're at school physically, some days they're online virtually, or a full virtual option. And we can just look around our area of the state and see examples of all three of them. There are some schools that want to go full face-to-face. There are some that have the hybrid, and there are some that have the full virtual. So it's important to understand the differences between all those. And if I'm an epidemiologist who just studies infectious diseases, then I'm going to look at that and say virtual is the safest because you're safer at home. The next safest is the hybrid, and the least safe would be 5 days a week at school physically. That's if you're just looking at COVID or the virus in a silo. Unfortunately, we don't have silos. Fortunately, I would say, we want to teach the whole child. And so we take into consideration physical safety, but we also take into consideration emotional safety and social safety. And so in looking at that, we have had a lot of conversations, and the school board said, we want to have as much face-to-face instruction as we can. So that was our charge this summer. And so we looked at that and we kept re-looking at it. We were hoping the summer would drop in cases, and it didn't. And we're all aware of that. And we started to look into and make phone calls and inquire about the safest way to run schools right now. And that included a lot of reading, included a lot of just professional development, a lot of phone calls, talking to people about the whole child, not just COVID-19. As the doctor from Southwest Health told us at our last meeting, kids ages 4 to 19 have very few problems with COVID-19 unless they have an underlying health condition. Staff are going to be a little different. And the older you get, the more severe the cases can be. So we want to take care of our staff. And some kids live in a house where there's someone with an underlying health condition. So we wanted to provide a full virtual option for those people who are uncomfortable coming back. And it's really none of our business why somebody chooses to stay home and do full virtual. We just wanted to offer that option. And we also looked at the hybrid, and we had a lot of conversations about the hybrid and the pros and cons of the hybrid. The pros is that it is a safer route. You have half the number of people in the school. The cons is that that's 3 days a week where the kids are not physically in front of our teachers. And we feel that that's the best place for them. So we sent out a survey to parents. The survey came back, 76% of the parents would prefer that we start in a face-to-face 5-day-a-week school environment. It was about 20% when you factor in 4K through 12th grade, 20% would prefer that we start with a hybrid. And a lot of those people wrote in comments too, I think the hybrid might be safer, but if we go face-to-face, I'm sending my kid. And about 4% stated they wanted a full virtual option. And looking at where the board wanted us to go, as much face-to-face as we can, with what the administrative team believes is best for kids, and what our teachers and parents and kids that were on the back of the reopening plan committee all said, really was reinforced by the parent survey. We want to be able to have our kids in our school in front of our teachers. And so what we would like to propose is providing parents with 2 options. And I'd like to send this out tomorrow morning, is that parents will have the option of full face-to-face and a full virtual option. Now, with those 2 options, I really hope somebody says, well, 20% of the people wanted a hybrid. Why didn't they consider that? We did consider hybrid a lot. I had a lot of conversation about hybrid. And our teachers are really going to have to be teaching in a hybrid format in this situation, which I know is not an if, it's a when. If a kid wakes up and he's got the sniffles and it's abnormal, it's not like seasonal allergies that we know every August to October, my kid wakes up with a runny nose because he has seasonal allergies. That's a normal condition that doctors are saying send them to school. But if it's abnormal, and somebody just doesn't feel well, but they're not sick enough to normally miss a day of school, we want them to be able to join school virtually that day. It will not count as an absence. We'll let the parents can call in, hey, my kid's not coming to school today, but they're gonna join virtually. So we do have some people who will be doing hybrid. If somebody's not feeling well, they may have the sniffles for 3 days. Okay, so our teachers are going to be teaching the kids in front of them. Our teachers are going to be teaching the kids that log in every day. But the kids who want to be there for the whole semester, they're not coming back in a week. So if our teachers have to teach those kids virtually for a few days at a time, we know I'm not going to give this assessment to them. I'm going to wait till they come back and I'll give it to them. So our teachers are really going to be teaching in a face-to-face environment and very often in a hybrid environment already. I don't think it serves our students to have our teachers teaching in a face-to-face, hybrid, and full virtual all at the same time. That's not best for the kids that are in the school. We don't feel that's best for the kids at home. So that's why we're suggesting Edmentum. These are full-time professional online educators. Yes, it's going to cost us more dollars, but we're looking at it as what's best for the kids. It's best for the kids to have access to a full virtual curriculum. I don't think it's in our kids' best interest. And I know a lot of parents on the survey, and I appreciate these comments, want our Cuba City teachers to teach their kids virtually. I get that because our teachers are really good. It's totally understandable. But what's best for the kid and what's best for the kids in that classroom is that we give those two options, knowing that the teachers are very often going to have to teach in that hybrid version as well as the face-to-face. So that's that's our administrative take, and Ellie, Deb, and Brad, chime in if I've forgotten anything. But we gave a lot of consideration to hybrid. We do have pretty much our hybrid protocols and procedures and plans on who's coming this day and who's coming that day, in case we're forced to go to that because of our numbers for COVID, and the state says, hey, we need you to reduce your population. And so what that means is you need to go hybrid. We're ready for that. We haven't shared all that information yet because we don't want to overload people, but it's ready. If we have to release it, we will. So I wanted to share our perspective that we gave a lot of thought and gathered a lot of input and had a lot of meetings and talked about all these different things. But I would really like to hear if you guys have questions or just comments. That's why this is a discussion. I think it's not just listen to Aaron talk for a while.
The floor is open. Anybody have questions regarding the couple? Go ahead.
If we go for virtual with the kids that are gonna be in that situation, will their curriculum line up with what we're doing here at school? Or will it be different?
Through Edmentum?
Through Edmentum?
Through Edmentum.
Yep. I can't say the activities will be the same, but the curriculum is based on standards that are similar.
And then who corrects, they correct the
Ellie,
students?
you might
Ellie,
want to clarify
Ellie?
more.
I can help a little bit with that. That's a great question. So we do have it's been wonderful. Some parents have reached out to ask how this is gonna work, and we've had really good conversations. Our guidance counselor, Miss Adler, is meeting with some of these students that are looking at the full virtual option, looking at what did they sign up for, what are classes in Edmentum that align to the syllabus as best they can, and so that they would get this, it would be the same credit equivalent as if they were here in our building. So they're using the same standards to teach those classes.
Okay. And
So,
at the elementary level with the Calvert learning, it would be the same. They would be getting the Common Core standards. But I would tell you what is being taught in a second grade classroom and the classroom next door is not exactly the same, but the standards are being met. So I don't think it's ever going to be identical, but it will meet the Common Core standards that we teach.
but yeah, we would definitely check in to see what did they sign. We'll be helping them sign up to make sure that the credits would count for graduation for us. So they're good to go, hopefully in January when they can come back
Right,
and feel comfortable coming back.
because then that Edmentum would do the grading of their
Yes.
teaching.
Yep.
And give them the grade.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
I've talked to a few different people from Dickeyville, Keeler, Cuba City, and pretty much the consensus every single person I've talked to is that they hope that they could get into face-to-face is what they really want. So that's encouraging that I think everybody's. We had our our consensus out there, and most of them came back that way, and that's actually what people are talking about. So I think we're on the right track.
Okay, thanks for sharing, Don. Anyone else?
Do we have a hard number of if the school should get 6 cases in the high school when we switch to a virtual or when we switch to a hybrid? Is there such a thing?
No. So it has changed this summer. And in talking with Jeff, and I talked with Jeff Kendry, who is our Grant County Health Director. I spoke with him today about our plan and the things that we're going to talk about today. And I asked him that question again. And he said it'll be a conversation. It'll be based on a percentage, not a raw number. So what that percentage is, that might change too. But at one point it was if there's 2 kids, the school's going to shut down. That was earlier this summer. That's not the case anymore. That's not what they're hearing from the state. They're hearing more use a percentage of the kids that are in the building. And that percentage, it is something that they're still working out, but it is not a total number. There are procedures that we got today at 2:00 that basically said, when there is a positive case, the county will call the school. We have to provide the county with people who are close contacts. So we've got to provide all that information for them. That's when we cohort. We don't actually have to quarantine the entire cohort. If we have seating assignments and the kids stay there, that's where they sit. Now, if kids are getting up and moving, then we may have to quarantine the whole class. But if we can identify, hey, these 6 kids were within 6 feet for at least 15 minutes, which is the qualifier, that group, those kids can be quarantined, but not the whole class, not the whole grade, and not the whole school, just based on a couple positives at this time. Tomorrow that might change, but that's what it is as of today. Thank you.
Anyone else? Alrighty. Item B, discussion of the SWAL activity participation. Go ahead, Aaron.
All right, and Carrie's here. I'll probably ask Carrie to chime in a little bit of this. We have met with the SWAL superintendents and high school principals and athletic directors several times now. And it's changed, hasn't it, Carrie? The tone of the meetings have changed. So at the beginning of the meeting, it was, or the beginning of our set meetings, it was very much, we don't think we can have fall sports because of the criteria that they're going to use for quarantining. And I'll give you an example for those of you who are at home who haven't heard me say this. If we play Southwestern on a Friday night football game, and on Monday I get a call that over the weekend, someone who was on the field, whether it be a coach, a player for either team, or a referee, tested positive, that anyone who was on the field has to be quarantined for 14 days. And then when they come back, because they haven't practiced 7 days in a row, they've got to get 7 practices in before a contest. So they would be quarantined for 2 weeks. They'd have to practice the 3rd week, and we come back and play the 4th week. So that's what we're being told. That's what the WIA released, the return to sports document that they sent us out last Friday says, and that was confirmed by Grant County today. So that's where it started. All superintendents, all high school athletic directors, and high school principals were all in agreement based on the current rules on what we're supposed to do. We can't really have fall sports. And we all have heard from different doctors that said that the students aren't really the high risk here. You have teachers that are coaches, they're at risk, the referees are at risk. And if there's a quarantine, that's going to impact your school. Or if it's spread, it's going to make your whole school go virtual. And those are just the current realities we're dealing with. So we thought, well, we might as well talk with our boards about this. And that's what we're going to do tonight and just get your take on it, because on Friday, we're going to have some official votes from the SWAL. Now, last night, Fenimore made the motion to approve low-risk sports for us. That would be cross country and golf, but postpone volleyball and football to the alternate spring calendars. regardless of what the SWAL does. They just said, we're not putting our kids and our faculty at risk no matter what. It's not going to be a conference decision, it's Fenimore decision. Knowing, and after speaking with Jeff today and confirming that's going to be the protocol, it is the recommendation of the administrative team, of our athletic director, and our head coaches for those fall sports that we consider and act on later, hopefully. Keeping the low risk sports, which would be girls golf and cross country in the fall, but moving the high risk sports, which are cross country and volleyball, to the spring. Football and volleyball to the spring. In talking with Southwestern, that's what Southwestern is recommending tonight. They have a board meeting right now as well. Also, we're all concerned about outdoor facilities in March in Wisconsin. Could be beautiful. Could be not. Could be really cold. I did call Southwestern superintendent. If they are playing an away game and we have a home game and we want to use their artificial field turf field, which will be ready by the spring, he said we can use that. He said if we have a home game and you have a home game, and you guys want to move it to a Saturday afternoon game, he said you guys can use our facility. Field turf is not going to be impacted by cold weather. It just isn't, because it's 8 inches of cut up tire. And so that field will be ready. And so that makes us feel a little more comfortable. Our field on some marches might be as hard as this table, or the floor. So that safety is a concern. So those are some of the things that we've talked about. I know in talking with Jeff, I brought up football and volleyball in the fall, and he started laughing. Jeff had repeatedly told all the superintendents at our superintendent meetings that we should not even be talking about football and volleyball, those high-risk sports, in the fall. It should not be an option. In our conference of 8 schools in the Southwest Activities League, 4 schools want to go ahead with fall sports and 4 schools want to postpone it. And that was just, that was the last vote that we had. It was kind of a stalemate. But we decided we're going to call another meeting. It's going to be on Friday because we wanted to have some discussion with the board. So those are our thoughts. And we're really just going one season at a time. So this is fall. What the WIA did is they basically took the calendar and said, if you want to play in the fall, here's a schedule. There is a tournament series, but they said there will not be a state tournament. It'll be like a regional. That's basically what it's going to be, because no one's willing to host. Camp Randall will not host people from all over Wisconsin, and they said, a month before we'll let you know what that tournament series is. But this year, state tournaments, unless there's a vaccine or unless things drastically change, don't look like they're going to happen. We're going to try to at least have some type of tournament series, like a regional something. So there's a culminating event is what they call it. So looking just at fall, we had talked at one point, do we vote our way, but we side with whatever direction the SWAL goes? It's my take that knowing that that's the quarantine protocol, I fear that with Coach Lawson coaching what is now a 5-week game season, if they play somebody from Riverdale that was positive, now in the 5 weeks that they have for contest, they're going to be quarantined for 2 and they can't play the 3rd. They're going to come back for the last week of the season. It's possible they could play the first week of the season, the last week of the season. So I ask you, what are the pros and cons of doing that? Obviously, a lot of us would like to get back to normal, but until the rules for normal change, I would have a hard time promoting a fall season, knowing that the kids could have it canceled, or not canceled, but severely disrupted, missing 60% or 80% of a season when you can postpone it. Now, Jeff was quick to tell me, I can't guarantee you that in the spring, by then it's going to be a vaccine either. He said, but you're more likely to be able to compete with less restrictions and have a more normal season in the spring than you are knowing what we know right now. So that was his recommendation. That's in alignment with my recommendation, which is in alignment with our administrative recommendation, which is in alignment with our athletic director and our 2 head coaches for those sports that would be delayed. So at this time, I'd like to field any and all questions that you guys have.
Can you explain what the seasons would look like given this new schedule where, winter, spring would be played?
Yeah, I do have if you're talking about the calendar,
Yes.
I've got that here. Carrie, is there anything you want to add while I'm looking for the calendar? Anything that I missed?
The only thing with the start and stop, if that's the direction we felt forced, there's been a lot of discussion on the volleyball side of things because of the SWAL conference kind of split. Football has a mix of SWAL and a bunch of other people that I didn't even realize until I was in that meeting. So there's a different thought there, but if we go to spring, you still have to have teams to play. And if like Six Rivers voted yesterday or the day before, they're going for volleyball this fall. And, not that they're in our conference, but just teams in the area to try to play, that would be a concern. I mean, the more we've talked, the more there's still, the risk is the risk. And maybe by Friday, when we sit in on the meeting, it'll have changed after people have had conversations. So, but with that shutdown, if you do have that situation happen, they have stated that there is the 50% rule for football and volleyball. If you don't get through 50% of your fall season or your matches or games, you could come back and have a season in the spring. But that's a big what if. And it's very difficult to plan for both. So that's the only add-on to what that would look like there.
So the WI did put out a new calendar, and this is approved. This is the calendar now for all sports. Basically, the fall sports some of them start August 17th, some start September 7th, and they go through about November 16th. That's about the range. That's the fall sports. So that would be for us, football, girls golf, boys and girls cross country, and girls volleyball. Then the winter sports, they would start around November 9th and conclude around March 1st. And so for us, that would be wrestling, boys and girls basketball, and gymnastics. Then there's the alternate fall timeline. And this is where the range of when they start and stop varies quite a bit. So like one season starts February 8th. Well, that's girls swimming and diving, so we don't have that. But it's football, girls golf, boys and girls cross country, and volleyball. So those start around March 1st and go through, some end April 19th, but girls golf goes through May 24th. And then there's the traditional spring sports, which start around April 19th and go through June 28th. So that's about the date. We've looked at this, and there are some sports where, man, there's quite a bit of crossover for different sports, and we don't want our kids to have to choose. We want them to be able to do different things. But if we look at it and say, okay, we don't have to have 7 contests or 7 weeks here, we can make this 5 to make that one a regular, because spring didn't get any sport. Last year fall had a full season, winter had most of the season until the tournament season. That was a hard 2 weeks for a lot of us, but and then spring didn't get anything. So we had talked as a SWAL conference, do we try to do our best to leave that spring calendar, like make sure they don't lose anything. We might have to shorten the fall, maybe volleyball and football, instead of having an 8-week season, maybe we swap that to a 6, so they still get a full season and leave spring alone. So so this is the WIA calendar, but they're going to be a little more lenient on when we can start and end some of those things too.
I guess my other question would be is, if the vote stayed 4-4, and you said by conference bylaws, that means that the motion failed, so that there would be, for instance, a volleyball season, but yet a school could opt out. So you have, say, 4 schools that are going to play volleyball. I guess the question would be who they're going to play, but then ultimately, who are you going to play? Come when and if you have a season.
So last night, Fenimore said we're doing spring stuff no matter what the SWAL does. That Riverdale, Southwestern, and Cuba are all part of that 4. So I don't know if you have a half SWAL championship in the fall, half a SWAL championship in the spring. it's gonna look different, you know, and not sure how that goes.
And it would change too if we can travel farther. I mean, right now, there's no multiple team invitations. I mean, it's, you know, seeing through rose glasses to think that that would just be available in March. But, you know, there's time to plan. I'm sure all the athletic directors in the state are looking forward to it.
And some of these schools that start in the fall might
If
not
they
get,
through half
they
their
might, they get through
season,
half the season, then they're done, but if they
They
get
are.
at 40% and they're shut down, then they're gonna be looking for contests in the spring also, which would be hard on athletes to, and, you know, have two halves of a season that far apart. That would be.
I do know that a lot of conferences, in the situation are already stating whether they voted on it or not. It's not a state issue thing. It's, they're not recognizing a SWAL or a conference championship this year or, you know, accolades. I suppose it depends on your conference. I mean, if your whole conference plays, you know, Six Rivers gets a whole season in, they definitely have the data to go back to, but there's discussion on that also.
Well, unfortunately, I know nothing here is good. There is no good plan, but given what you've said, it's tough to say that sports should trump education, given that if we wind up with the positive, then we shut school down, which was our main focus tonight. So I would say that in our attempt to have school open face-to-face the most, we have to probably limit the contact of our teachers, staff, coaches, students, you know, by not having a sport. Unfortunately, I learned that that wasn't really the case in the spring, and the Six Rivers decision is exactly what I was told over this past weekend by a parent that, gee, how come Cuba City didn't play softball? And I said, well, WI canceled it. Well, but we just went out and formed a club and we played 25 games. It was like, well, that sure isn't keeping those kids safe or out of contact. So unfortunately, you know, I guess obviously public's listening to this. So I guess I would, you know, in helping us have school, you know, be careful what you decide to do.
And the hard part about that too, and what they found in Iowa is a lot of those were able to go successfully. But if there was an outbreak, they weren't telling 650 kids you got to do virtual school. And think of all the parents that are going to be inconvenienced if we have to do that as well. So a lot of those tournaments went on without any transmission or without any problems, which promoted, hey, this is safe to do. In a school setting, that's different because if we do get those outbreaks, you know, we've got to shut things down, and that's going to really inconvenience parents.
Last weekend was my daughter's last AU tournament. We played in Minnesota, but one of the teams out of Missouri canceled in every division that they had a team because they had an outbreak with one of their teams, and they weren't sure, like, with facilities and practice and interaction. So throughout the tournament, anybody that was supposed to play the Missouri team had to find, like, we had to find teams willing to slide in and play an extra game. But, you know, that's just one program, and it wiped out every kid's opportunity in that program to play. And as much as I love basketball and sports in general, I would tend to agree that we're trying to make a plan so that we can educate kids and keep that in mind.
Other questions? Comments?
I heard Coach Lawson say that the Six Rivers is gonna play volleyball. Are they also playing football?
I believe they've moved football to spring.
They moved football to spring, but are playing volleyball.
And I don't know about the SWC. I've heard 5 different things today. So, you know, just comparables in our area.
Okay.
And then I look at, you know, Illinois called it early to move all things to spring. Minnesota also called it, and I think Michigan did last week. So it's just that funky state of Iowa that has a great plan.
Well, our main concern is to educate the kids. You know, we're trying to keep them in-house. You know, if we go to this, we're giving a little bit of a risk to take that education away. face to face.
And there's gonna be disappointment. I mean,
Yeah.
the kids, we've treated this, at least I've been with volleyball kids and, coached like that. We treat it as if we are control right now. And if there's still hope, put something out on the table. But it sure takes a lot off the worry for everybody sitting here that's trying to plan for the next 2 weeks because you have to declare by June 1st with the
September
WIA.
1st.
Are you going to play in the fall for those specific sports, or are you asking to play in the spring? And that's the date. So unless something magical happens on August 30th,
29th, 30th,
I don't even know how many days are. 31st. Okay.
31st on a Monday.
That's where we're at.
Other questions, board?
Do we table this until we know some more information?
Well, at this point, it's discussion, and I think I heard Aaron say there's a meeting Friday, but there is under F, there is a motion that we will talk about under new business. So to address what you just said. And obviously, if the motion isn't stated the way you want it, it would die if nobody made that motion and there could be a different motion made. If there's nothing else, we'll go on to C, discussion of collaborating with neighboring districts on a school nurse.
Yep. John Costello, superintendent at Southwestern, and I have been on basically weekly either phone calls or Zoom meetings together. And he brought up the idea of possibly hiring a full-time nurse to share between the two districts, just for 1 year. This would not be a recurring thing. And looking at the guidelines for prevention, investigation, control of COVID-19 outbreaks in K-12 schools in Wisconsin, basically his thought was we could have a nurse at one district in the morning, the other district in the afternoon. Every day would be working with our office staff to make sure that the students are being treated the correct way from a healthcare perspective, to do a lot of the COVID paperwork, those types of things. This would be a really good service for the kids, because when we called the parents, it would be more like, hey, your son or daughter was looked at by a healthcare professional. This is the recommendation. Right now, basically, if kids don't feel well, we kind of sometimes we'll say, well, why don't you lay down for a while? But otherwise, it's, do you want to call your mom? And that's what we do. So this would be a service for the parents. It is not in the district budget. It would be roughly probably $35,000-$40,000 to do that. So we just have to have that conversation about, is that something that we want to go over budget for as a service for the kids just for this 1 year? Or is that something that we want to look at allocating those funds elsewhere? So I told John that we would have that conversation. They're going to have the conversation tonight at their board meeting as well.
Input, feedback for Aaron?
I think it would be a good peace of mind for everyone. Students, parents. It takes.
Do we
some of
feel
Decision
confident we
making
can get a person like that for 1 year?
That would be my concern.
That is a different question. I don't know if someone would want to do that for 1 year. I'm not sure. And I'm sure there's a lot of schools that are trying to find somebody for just that 1 year, but I don't know if we'd be able to pull somebody out of a more secure position to do that. I'd be guessing if I told you one way or the other.
I've gone to quite a few schools that do have a nurse on hand all the time, and it seems to run really well for the office. I know that because it's somebody else that can help out with a situation like that. I don't know, if we tried it for 1 year, I think we might like it and maybe put it in the budget too. You never know. So something to think about, seriously.
The school I taught at for 10 years had a full-time nurse. They still have a
Right.
full-time nurse.
I wouldn't argue that it's not a benefit. I'm a little challenged with it being a budget item that we did not budget for it. As a parent, if I get a call, I'm gonna come get my kid, and if I feel like they need to be seen by a medical professional, I'll take them. It might be a little bit different if we had a bigger school and more, exposure to different items, but I know that in the small community, I think we have a lot of relatives around that can pick up our kids if we need to do that, but, I think just this year with it not being in the budget, that's a little challenging.
Well, at this point, you'd have a 50% chance the nurse would be here to see your kid
Yeah,
at
there's
that
no
point in
guarantee.
time, but
Yeah.
now it's 0.
Right.
Other comments, questions? So what direction do we give Aaron? And it's not an agenda item, but
Just a discussion. Southwestern's having a discussion tonight too, so if it's something.
if I said those in favor go like this, what would we get?
I would be in favor of further investigation.
May I
So look into it.
I know I didn't sign in, but being somebody who would be directly affected by this, it has been I'm gonna say a dream of mine since I started that this would be a possibility for us. I don't know how much the high school is affected. I would never want to speak for Pam or Julie, but at the elementary level, we had so many kids. We were constantly inundated with sniffles and runny noses, and my belly hurts, and I don't feel good, and vomit, diarrhea. You get the gambit. And having somebody that could help field those issues would make Jessica's and my day incredibly more productive, and would be a much bigger benefit for the kids and for the parents. And I know it's relatively isolated incidences, but we have had days and times where we have students with 103 fevers that we have to hold on to for 3 hours because parents can't get off work, or can you just wait until I'm done with my lunch break and then I'll be there as soon as I can. And I hope people would be more responsive in a COVID scenario, but it's a risk that I don't think is fair for us to have to potentially deal with.
Thanks for that.
And that's it.
So I sense that the majority would support it. Is that what I thought I saw?
Yes.
So what would your game plan be, Aaron?
Get with John and come up with specifics and figure out whether we can do that. What's it going to cost? How are we going to do a cost sharing, analysis and what that would look like? Call other schools to see what I know what teachers get. I don't know what school nurses get. So I would say, based on this conversation, I'll get with John and we will bring something back in September.
Well, and I'm still interested, I still think it's a good opportunity, but what does that look like when, let's say we have a case or Southwestern has a case and now that nurse has been working very closely with that individual.
There's that cross
Do we
contamination.
lose- Yeah,
Yeah.
do we have
Now-
to quarantine that staff member?
My thought is that people in the medical field are going to be a lot better at PPE and protecting themselves and others around them because that's what they do. So I'm less worried about that. But obviously, when we go to a doctor's office, the same nurse will see 18 different patients, before lunch. So I think that's their job, is to know how to mitigate those problems.
Well, having a spouse who's a nurse and in fact doing employee health, at this point, it's going to cost you a little more than 80,000 is my first comment.
Okay.
And the question is can you find somebody that is experienced versus you're just going to find a nurse?
Yep.
And secondarily, my wife is wearing a mask and a face shield, which spends longer than 15 minutes with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to have to look more like what you see on TV than just us.
Yep.
If there's any other comments, otherwise we'll move on to new business. Approved the Neola policy updates, Aaron.
Yep. Megan, do you want to talk a little bit about our policy meeting today?
Sure. So primarily we were looking at, there's a very large document from Title IX changes, which is sexual harassment and other policies. Those were all legal changes our lawyer suggested that we take a look at. There's a chance they could be overturned in November because some of them are a little up for challenge, I should say.
But at this time, we are suggesting their approval, and our lawyers will provide guidance throughout that process as needed. There were also some smaller language changes to several different policies, but they were clarifying things like what conflict of interest looks like and smaller scale wording changes. So it was the committee's decision to, we're suggesting those for approval.
And none of the changes were locally driven. They were all provided by Neola based on court cases, legislation changes, or just things that they've seen in schools that they think, oh, this word looks better than the other.
Are there any questions, board, of those changes? Hearing none, would somebody move to approve?
I'll move to approve the Neola policy updates as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Andrews.
Yes.
Bowden.
Yes.
Collins.
Yes.
Hinderman, yes. Pohl.
Yes.
Schrader.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item B, approve the building level seclusion and restraint annual report to the board.
Yep, you heard that from the principals today. It's 0. The seclusion restraint form, the full total is 0. So we have to prove that we approve this before October. So we do this usually every August. So that's it.
Are there any questions? Would somebody move?
I'll make a motion to approve the building level seclusion and restraint annual report as presented.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Andrews.
Yes.
Bowden.
Yes.
Collins.
Yes.
Hinderman, yes. Pohl.
Yes.
Schrader.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Approve the back to school plan to include face-to-face instruction 5 days a week, as well as full virtual option. Aaron?
Yep, so this is what we talked about during our discussion. This is, I think, what the majority of the board wants, majority of the administrative team wants, majority of the teachers, majority of the parents filling out the survey is having those two options available. And I'd love to be able to send those educational option, that survey out to parents tomorrow and give them the weekend to think about it. For some people, this is a really difficult and personal decision. And we understand that this is very unique to each family, and certainly don't want to pass any judgment on anybody who picks one or the other. So I'd love to be able to get that out to the parents and have them have time to look at that final document and make the best informed and safest decision for them.
Well, I want to thank again administration and all the staff for making this plan. I know you spent countless hours in meetings and certainly got feedback from staff and parents when we have 500 plus responses to a survey. That's incredible. And I think at this point it's clear that I guess I looked at it as parent choice. They had the choice of virtual or face-to-face. And at this point, I think clearly the parents spoke and they want face-to-face. So that at least is going to be our primary goal. So are there any questions?
One more thing, I know I did say this before, but in talking with Jeff Kendray today, he looked over our plan. He said he did not read through all of it because it was fairly lengthy, but he did look through for some main things. He asked a few questions about how we're going to handle transitions, how we're going to handle elementary school kids, moving around for cafeteria usage and lunch and high school classes. Just asked some questions about common areas. How are you going to let kids in the building and out of the building? And once we were done answering all of his questions, he stated that he thought we have obviously put a lot of planning and thought we came up with a plan that allowed for the safest in school opportunity for our kids. Nothing can be 100%. We know that. But to hear him say that, and I know he wants most schools to go virtual. So for us to have him say, it looks like you put a lot of thought in that and mitigated a lot of the risk for your kids and your staff and your community was very much appreciated today.
Questions? Hearing none, would somebody move?
I would move to approve the back to school plan to include face-to-face instruction 5 days a week, as well as a full virtual option as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Andrews.
Yes.
Bowden.
Yes.
Yes.
Hinderman, yes. Pohl.
Yes.
Schrader.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Again, thank you, everybody, for supporting that. Item D, approve 2 educational options for the 2021 school year. Aaron?
So that was our back to school plan. So now the next part is to say that we are going to offer 2 different, I know they're similar, but these next 3 items all kind of have to go together in this order. So this one is just to say we've got 2 options. We have the face-to-face and we have full virtual education through Edmentum, although there will be one district employee touch and base with everybody. Speaking with Edmentum and looking at the parent surveys wanted to have some connection with the school. And so we're looking at ways that we can do that and have, so when they can hopefully come back second semester, that they still have that connection with the school. So those are the 2 options that we would love to be able to ask parents tomorrow. Give us some time and think about this over the weekend, and by Monday morning, let us know so we can get started on scheduling.
Questions? Again, we take a motion.
I'll move to approve the 2 educational options for the 2020-21 school year as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Andrews,
Yes.
Bowden,
Yes.
Collins,
Yes.
Hinterman, yes. Pohl,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item E, approve Edmentum as our full virtual option for this school year.
So Edmentum is the online course. Now there's 2 different, the elementary program is called
Calvert Learning.
Calvert Learning, and it's
Play-Doh
Play-Doh courseware at the high school and middle school. So again, this is what we talked about during our discussion item is our teachers are going to be teaching face-to-face with, let's just use the parent survey, 76% of the kids. And if the hybrid people come, it could be as high as 96% of the kids there in the classroom. If those kids find themselves in self-isolation because somebody that they were around outside of school tested positive and their parents say, oh, you should be home for a couple weeks, they're going to be in with Google Meet and watching the lessons and interacting there when they can. So they're kind of going to be doing some hybrid thing as well. Moving to Edmentum, that is for the elementary school, and talking with Edmentum, a lot of that can be done with a parent when they get home from work. A lot of it is recorded. And so they can watch that when it's convenient or they can do that when it's convenient for that family. There are some live things, but a lot of it is recorded. Middle school and high school, it's primarily recorded and it's self-paced. So we feel that with the self-paced instruction and assessment and planning being done by full-time virtual teachers, that is the best option for our kids. That's good. They're trained in how to do virtual learning. That's their full-time job to do that. Our teachers are going to be focused on the kids in the classroom and the kids who are going to be coming back, who might be on the screen today, but they're going to be coming back here pretty soon. So we feel that this is best for our kids to have Edmentum as our partner. And one of the questions in the survey is, is it necessary to outsource the virtual instruction? It is not necessary at all. We're doing this at a cost because we feel it's best for kids. So it's not necessary, but we do feel that that's going to, when our kids come back, we feel that that's going to give them the best. Now, if the state just said everybody has to go virtual, our teachers would be ready for that challenge. But when we're teaching face-to-face and some hybrid, it's really hard to do that full virtual piece as well. So at this time, the recommendation from the administrative team is to approve Edmentum as our full virtual partner.
Are there questions?
Yeah, I have one. Okay, if you go to Edmentum and they're pre-recorded, let's say the students are working on it at later hours, how do they present a question to the teacher if they have an issue?
We would have, the plan right now is to have one of our staff members kind of as that liaison.
I'm assuming Edmentum has like a contact, whether it's by email or through their software. I'm not sure which way there is, but.
And depending on grade level, it's a little bit different.
A little
but-
different.
But utilizing a staff member as well as kind of a liaison and a contact. It's like any virtual option. If we were to go full virtual, we wouldn't expect our staff members to answer emails at 11:30 at night. If
No,
That's when it got
no.
asked. And, you know, I think it's going to be one of those things where this question gets asked and the response will get back to you as quick as possible. There's no 24-hour hotline with any virtual option, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a concern, if they're working, so their parents are working during the day, they come home, they do their work and homework, and they have a little issue, and they don't have anyone to.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a help desk ticket system that they have. I just don't know what that is, whether it's right there in the coursework or an email. Hey, when you have questions, here's your contact.
That's actually a piece, Chuck, when we talk about how we're gonna do virtual at the elementary level, because kids might have to go to a daycare while parents are at work.
Right.
We're looking at providing some options where we might have different classroom teachers take different hours of the day to
Yeah,
field
I
all
saw
the
that.
questions.
Which is good.
Right, and just trying to,
Cover the base.
right, do the best we can now to do that in addition to teaching face-to-face would be virtually impossible.
Okay. Other questions? At this time, then, is there a motion that somebody would like to make?
I'll move to approve Edmentum as our full virtual option for the school year 4K through 12 as presented.
Is there a second?
I would second.
Andrews,
Yes.
Bowden,
Yes.
Collins,
Yes.
Hinderman, yes. Pohl,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
White. Yes. Motion carried.
Item F is approve the recommendation for all fall sports, and we just talked about that, but Aaron, go ahead.
Yep, at this time, we would recommend that cross-country and girls golf, which are deemed low risk by the WIAA, continue to be in the fall. And we look at volleyball and football, which are considered mid to high risk sports, move to the spring.
So that the motion as presented does not state that. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was hard to write this out because I wasn't sure
understand.
where you guys were gonna be, so.
I'm just clarifying.
Yep.
So given the recommendation that we just heard, are there questions?
To clarify with cross country and golf, if they for some reason, like if they have a student participant who has COVID, do they also have to do, the full team would have to do the 2 weeks and then the 7 days of practice? So could they also miss half their season?
They could, and again, if it's up to half, there is that alternate season. Our thought was it is a lot more likely to be able to save for practices. And contests would be a little more difficult, but it's within 15 minutes of them, or within 6 feet of them for 15 minutes. So not too often in a 20 to 30 minute race are you that close to a different person. So that would be a little different. But Jeff did think with proper techniques, it would be a lot easier to do those two sports than the high risk.
And I just wanted to clarify because,
Yeah,
I hate
it's a
to see
possibility.
those kids
Yep.
miss out when we're making the exception for others.
Those are two activities too, Megan, that, back to the March discussion.
Well, and I was a cross country and track
Yeah.
athlete, so that was where my mind went
Right.
immediately of, then you cut that team in half.
And we had talked
If
about
they're
the calendar has cross country running right into
There's
track.
overlap with.
Yeah.
There's an overlap for like
Training.
2 weeks.
Okay.
And we just thought, oh my gosh, you can't go from a grueling cross country season right into a track season. That would be.
And along
Really
with
rough
that,
and
we talked about it in the small meetings too, when we have brought up cross-country and golf. I mean, golf being probably the most unlikely scenarios to happen. Everything has risks, we know that. And the numbers that we have in our own program, even with the tryout, and they're gonna keep things pretty much duals. If you've ever been to the big cross-country invites and work in the chute, there's not a whole lot of social distancing going on there, but they've removed almost all of those,
Okay.
not knowing what a postseason would look like. it's the better of all scenarios
Sure.
for activity. But yes, if we have a situation, it could end their season, or it could potentially shorten it to the fact that they would ask for the spring season.
And thank you, I just wanted to.
Yep.
Other questions? Okay, we have a motion here, and I will read it. Basically, it's to move to approve the recommendation that we would follow the fall sports as presented. You know, let's do this. I will make a motion that Cuba City offer cross-country and golf this fall and move volleyball and football to the new spring season. Is that acceptable, Aaron?
Yep, just make sure it's girls golf.
Girls golf and cross-country this fall, moving volleyball and football per the recommendations of administration and coaches to the spring. Is there a second?
Second.
Andrews.
Yes.
Bowden.
Yes.
Collins.
Yes.
Hinderman. Yes. Pohl.
Yes.
Schrader.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item G, approve the submission of waiver for educator effectiveness for the 2021 school year. Aaron?
Yep, educator effectiveness is how all teachers are evaluated, and it's based on a 3-year cycle. So last year, during the shortage, a lot of schools wanted to apply for a waiver for educator effectiveness, and what they found is the waiver only delayed the summative year, which in 1 out of every 3 years, you get summatively evaluated, which means your evaluator puts a number by your name. And what that would mean is that this year, now instead of doing a summative evaluation, which is a lengthy process for both the teacher and for the evaluator, for 1/3 of the staff, it would be 2/3 of the staff. They have made an exception now. There's 2 different waivers that we can apply for in conjunction, which basically just says this year we're putting a pause on educator effectiveness and we'll pick up where we left off next year. And so most of you know, this was my job for 3 years. Educator effectiveness is near and dear to my heart, and I believe that every school should be able to say we have an effective educator in every classroom. And we have, teachers have been doing that since 2013, and we're at the point right now where I think if we can just tell teachers, worry about your kids. Worry about your kids right now. This year, we're going to worry about their social, emotional health. We're going to try to close our COVID gaps. And our principals, instead of being evaluators, are going to be more coaches, and they're going to be in there to support. And principals are going to, and the administrative assistants are going to be doing a lot of triage and a lot of paperwork around all the COVID things. I think at this point, the administrative team, knowing where our teachers are with educator effectiveness, are comfortable doing this, putting a pause on it for 1 year. I think our teachers would greatly appreciate 1 year of just saying, okay, I'm just going to worry about my kids this year right now. Having said that, if the principals want teachers, a particular teacher to do something, they're not doing it, and we're not doing educator effectiveness that year, then there are other things that we can do based on our handbook and its plan of improvement. And so that does not have to be in conjunction with educator effectiveness at all. I would say if you're looking at that, that's a real small percentage of our staff. So the vast majority of our staff are wonderful at working with kids, and I think this would make their job, I don't want to say easier because that's not what we're going for. It would make their jobs more meaningful to just focus on the kids this year, and I think this is the year that we could do that. And I would not suggest this knowing how I feel about educator effectiveness, unless I thought this was best for our students and our staff.
And we will be meeting regularly with all those new teachers.
Yep.
Regardless.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Our new staff, we will still have meetings with them and kind of guide them through the process.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great.
So yes, new employees for sure. For the 3 years I've been here, any new employee I meet with them weekly. We would still, none of that practice would change. It's, so I will still meet, Raya is my new employee, I meet with her. I still consider Mr. Derby, he would still fall in that category, so I will meet with him regularly. So just be aware of that. It's not like you wouldn't do all the supported pieces. Those things will still be in place.
Questions? Would somebody move?
I'll move to approve the submission of waiver for educator effectiveness for the 2020-21 school year as presented.
I'll second.
Andrews.
Yes.
Bowden.
Yes.
Collins.
Yes.
Hinneman, yes. Pohl.
Yes.
Schrader.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item H is approve the addition of a voluntary short-term disability for employees
Yep.
beginning September 1st.
This came out of the personnel committee meeting last year, when we talked about that gap for new employees when they don't have a lot, they have 8 sick days that first year. What if something happens to help them from 8 days to when long-term disability were to kick in if something were to happen? So we looked at some, Heather, do we get like maybe 3 different proposals?
Yeah.
Of what this is. This is no cost to the district. This is paid for by the employee, but it does bridge that gap from 8 days and it covers them from 8 weeks if something happens. So the first 2 companies we had, we didn't think we could really go with because they required a certain percentage of our staff, and it was like 25%. And we're like, wow, that's a lot. We're not going to have that one. This one just says however many teachers you have, that's how many. Or is this one the minimum of 3?
I think it's actually 5.
It's 5. So if we can get 5 people, 5 is different than 25 because we have about 106 employees or so. So this is something that we have, and it does carry them from that 8-day period, and it covers them from 8 weeks to get them closer to that long-term disability.
Has there been any conversation with staff? I mean, you would assume that we're gonna get the 5?
I think you had met with the CCEA, and
There were approximately like 12, just from that group. That's not everyone, but just from that group, there was about 12 people that were interested.
Great.
And the cost is gonna vary. The cost is gonna vary depending on their annual salary.
but again, no cost to the district.
Right.
Other questions? Would somebody move?
I will move to approve the addition of voluntary short-term disability for employees beginning September 1, 2020.
Is there a second?
I'll
second.
I'll give it to you. All right, Andrews.
Yes.
Bowden.
Yes.
Collins.
Yes.
Hinneman, yes. Pohl.
Yes.
Schrader.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Approve the COVID-19 appendix to the Cuba City School District Handbook.
Yeah, this basically came from WASB and said, here are some things that you may want to consider. What they're suggesting is instead of rewriting your entire handbook just for this one thing, just write up an appendix and attach it when the pandemic's over. You just take that out. And it covers things from how to determine whether you should come to work, what to do if you're isolated or quarantined, but you feel well enough to work. You can still teach from home. We'll try to provide some adult supervision in those classrooms. But if you can join class and teach remotely, that does not count as a sick day. But there's going to be some days where you can't teach, and then we'll try to find a sub the best we can. There might be some other coverage. We might have teachers filling in for different teachers. A lot of our subs this year have already called in and told us, I'm not comfortable coming in, because a lot of our subs are over 60, and I can't blame them. So this appendix is just to give staff here are some things that are just a little different this year. We're not going to use these things once the pandemic is over.
Questions?
And this did go to the CCEA, sent that out and heard back, and they said, nope, thank you. We have no questions, comments, or concerns.
Would somebody move?
I'll move to approve the addition of the COVID-19 appendix to the CCSD handbook as presented.
Second?
I'll second. Andrews.
Yes.
Bowden.
Yes.
Collins.
Yes.
Hinneman, yes. Pohl.
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item 8, personnel. A, approve the hiring of Miss Gail Pitson as our community-based 4K teacher.
We're excited to have Ms. Pitson on board. It helps that we have built a connection in Dickeyville with her child care center. She's got 20 years of experience as a child care provider, working with children this age, and as a certified teacher. Mr. Olson and I had the opportunity to observe what she did in person when we were looking at the center. She really did an amazing job interviewing and kind of set herself apart as a top-notch candidate. We're excited that she's going to bring that experience and knowledge to students who will be considered Cuba City elementary school students despite being in a community-based setting. So I strongly recommend hiring her.
Thank you, Brad. Are there questions? Would somebody move?
I'll move to approve the hiring of Mrs. Gail Pitson as our community-based 4K teacher as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Andrews,
Yes.
Bowden,
Yes.
Collins,
Yes.
Hinderman, yes. Cole,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Approve the hiring of Mrs. Carrie Lawson as the Cuba City High School Activities Director.
Yep, and Carrie has been working as the acting AD until this meeting and has done a wonderful job. Carrie's a wonderful coach for us and has a lot of experience in working with our coaches and advocating for kids. So we're really excited that she's up for the challenge and we think that she'll do a wonderful job.
If there's no questions, would somebody move, please?
I'll move to approve Mrs. Lawson as the CCHS Activities Director as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Andrews,
Yes.
Bowden,
Yes.
Collins,
Yes.
Hinderman, yes. Cole,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Carrie. Item C, approve 4 UWP interns.
Yep, we had 5 openings. We only had 4 people apply, and Mr. Lutz did meet with all 4 of them and checked the references with Mr. Tim Hazen. And feels that we're getting 4 top-notch level interns for sure.
Are there any questions of this hire? Would somebody move?
I'll make a motion to approve the hiring of all 4 UWP interns as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second. Andrews,
Yes.
Bowden,
Yes.
Collins,
Yes.
Hinderman, yes. Cole,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item D, approve the hiring of Mr. Aaron Kaiser as the Cuba City High School assistant football coach.
Yep, this is something that Mr. Holzmer passed on to me right before he stepped down as acting AD. Mr. Kaiser has coached a variety of things in Southwestern. He was a UW Platteville standout football player in college, and he lives right across the street from the school. So that shouldn't be a hard commute for him. So Mr. Holzmer and Mr. Olson and myself all recommend that we approve this hire.
Would somebody move?
I'll make a motion to approve the hiring of Mr. Aaron Kaiser as CCHS assistant football coach as presented.
Is there a second? I'll second.
Andrews,
Yes.
Bowden,
Yes.
Collins,
Yes.
Hinderman, yes. Cole,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item E, approve the additional summer hours for Cuba City High School Library Media Specialist Tina Burkett.
Yep, this is something that we do every year. In every school I've ever been to, there's always some additional summer hours for the librarian because the library is used up to the last day of school and sometimes the last past the last day of school in order to get all the books back, I'm sure. But they do this to get rid of books that were not used and get in new books and label them and do all those different things. It's a very common practice that we continue to do. And this year, Mrs. Sharon Olson was able to do that during the last week of regular week of school, so she did not put in any hours, but Tina worked this and then some hours.
If there's no questions, would somebody move?
I'll move to approve the additional summer hours for CCHS LMS librarian Tina Burkett as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Andrews,
Yes.
Bowden,
Yes.
Collins,
Yes.
Hinderman, yes. Pohl,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
motion carried.
Committee reports, budget and finance.
Did not meet this month though. Okay. We met pretty much every day for the, the back to school plan, so there's not a lot of these. We did meet with the policy tonight, but that's what we acted on.
Building and grounds, Chuck, anything?
We didn't meet, but I stepped in this morning to get the boilers in place and start the piping, so that's a good thing.
They said they'll be up and ready by September 1.
Oh, yeah.
Curriculum and instruction,
Did not meet this one.
okay. Personnel did not meet. Policy, you met tonight.
And
We heard
presented the
those
items for
changes.
action. Mhm.
Technology and transportation. Is there any-
We have not met. I don't know that, are we gonna be scheduled there with anything going on?
We will have something coming up for the transportation side.
Foundation has not met.
No.
And as the CISA 3 rep, obviously CISA 3 has been inundated with trying to help school districts with virtual learning requests, and that Admetum thing that he pulled out of his hat really sounds like it's helped, so. So, other than that, I don't have anything except entertain a adjourn motion.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in at home.
Yeah, perfect.